did.
You sure?
He did. We
Hey,
are
everyone.
Welcome to the Fox Den. 2 nights in a row you get to see me on here, because last night me and Bob were on Taryn's show talking about Pennhurst Paracon, which is next week. And guess who missed it?
I'm sorry, Taryn, I missed it. I do try and get to her shows, but it's like Bob's on. I should have been there.
Yes. But anyway, it was a good show. We were just answering some questions about Pennhurst. So if you have any questions about Pennhurst and your tickets, and if you're a vendor and whatever, go watch the archive of Taryn's show, The Paranormal Brew. Get some questions there, answered. And if not, go to pennhurstasylum.com. Look there for all the information and all the different types of tickets, etc., that you can get for that event. And it will be phenomenal. This year is bigger and better. Every year it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But tonight, and even in this forum, the forum that we work in, the paranormal forum, the running the events forum, we need the knowledge that our guest has to keep us out of trouble. And the trouble I'm talking about, with our mouths, with our contracts, with things like that, right? To keep us out of the courtroom. Okay?
Yeah. I don't know if anybody keep you out of the courtroom, but go ahead.
I'm going to play his video, and we're going to have him on here, and he will tell us all about this. This week in the Fox Den with Gina B and Mama D, we welcome Carl Unegbu. There may be far worse things for comedians or comedy actors to worry about than having a string of jokes that bomb. Just ask Dave Chappelle, Conan O'Brien, Howard Stern, Adam Carolla, CHARLIESHEEN, John Lovitz, Jimmy Kimmel, John Oliver, Jay Leno, and a host of others. What they should be concerned about are the details that keep them out of the courtroom, especially in a country as litigious as the U.S. has become. Carl is considered the foremost authority on comedy and the law, and has written an entire book using these comedy legends and others as cautionary tales that help comedians become aware of ways to avert lawsuits and legal entanglements. Carl is a New York attorney, longtime editor of Comedy Beat website, and subsequently the writer of a highly read blog called Oh Carl's Law, focusing on the intersection between comedy and law. Carl also co-hosted a quarterly forum in Manhattan called Comedy Dialogue, which regularly served up a great combo of stand-up comedians and panel discussions. Carl's new book, Comedy Goes to Court, When People Stop Laughing and Start Fighting, ensures that people who work in the comedy arena take the smart steps to prevent the disagreements, contractual missteps, and on or off stage rhetoric or behavior that can result in expensive lawsuits. He directly addresses how far you can go to have the First Amendment protect you. There are lots of lessons here for anyone in the entertainment business, not just comedians or comedy actors. And even if you aren't trying to make a living telling jokes, you'll find these fascinating stories revealing about society and the world. His book has been described as a must-read for comedians and a should-read for everybody else in our contemporary society that has become so polarized. We welcome you, Carl, and everyone to the Fox Den. Hey, Carl.
Hi.
Welcome to the Fox Den. So we have Carmen saying hi, and Colette saying hi, and Lauren saying hi. That's my girl. She's my worker bee for Pennhurst right there.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And now that video, I have to say, my voice, I don't know, I feel like I sounded a little in there because I was trying to make that video, and because we were running this big event, I was getting like notification after notification after notification. I kept getting interrupted while I was trying to make this audio for my video, and then I was getting really irritated. But I finally got through it. But it's just like the first take, I got all the way to the end, and then like the phone buzzed. I'm like, no, oh God. And it sounded so good at first, but at least I got it.
You come out okay, I think.
Yeah,
Oh,
agree.
well,
You got to imagine, Carl, she's the most difficult on herself.
I do thank you. But now this the Comedy Goes to Court and the other book too. I'm going to put that up quickly too here because you have your other book here, Comedy Under Attack, The Golden Age and the Headwinds. So you have those two books, which are both available on Amazon, correct?
Yes, there.
Okay. So now, again, comedy. Now, you being a lawyer, how did you get connected with this whole comedy world?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, first of all, for having me. And this is such a wonderful opportunity to yet again talk about comedy and the book, which I believe, which is my some kind of, I wrote the book as some kind of a service to the industry, both comedians and comedy lovers more broadly. Anyway, so speaking of how I got into comedy, my first foray into comedy happened when I was going to school. See, when I was going to school at Columbia, I was studying journalism, and then this is New York City. There is so much entertainment and comedy business going on. So I visited a club, a comedy club, during an open mic in Harlem.
Okay.
I think it was, yeah. And then I checked out the show, and then I wrote about the show, for a class assignment, which was well received. And then, but that was the extent of that. Then I graduated school, and then I was out there in the city working as a journalist. And I was just working as a journalist, not even talking about comedy. And then, because previously I was a lawyer in Miami before I came to New York, studied journalism, and then, kind of went into journalism. Now, so when I was out there talking about, being a journalist, I wasn't even covering comedy. I was talking about other things, in general, real estate, politics, current affairs, and things like that. And then some of my former colleagues at Columbia, they came up to me and said, why don't we maybe start a news site that covers comedy? I mean, I was like, wow, comedy? How did this come about? Well, so, I mean, I saw that they were serious. Then I figured, okay, why not? Then it kind of rekindled my interest in comedy, the things I wrote about comedy. Because, after that class assignment, even though I wasn't writing about comedy, I was still like checking out comedy clubs. So I loved the thing. Anyway, so long story short, I agreed with my friends, So we started Comedy Beat, a website devoted to covering comedy issues about comedians and things of that nature. So yeah, that was how that came about, and that was how I went from genre journalism into like comedy journalism. So
And as a lawyer, you said you were a lawyer back in Miami. What sort of law did you practice in Miami?
Oh yeah, so I was like we did a lot of litigation, litigation, contracts and things of that nature. So yeah, it was busy. It was busy. It took us into courtrooms a lot. But then I decided to do a bit more stuff with my life outside the courtroom. So I was drawn to journalism. Talk about more coverage and inquiry about the wider world beyond the courtroom. So yeah, so that I was drawn to journalism for that reason. So I came to New York and then ended up, in the space.
Getting back into law, but with comedians. Well, it's interesting because I just from seeing different things that go on, comedians can say things that can be taken the wrong way and can get them into trouble. Heck, anybody can at this rate.
That's what we're doing.
It's somebody over here. But I think it's important to have somebody have your back, whether it's in comedy or whether it's in paranormal. So if you ever want to branch out into the law for the paranormal team, just let us know because we know a lot of people that might be needing a lawyer.
I'm telling you. Well, while I was reading the book, what I was coming up with was, boy, to be a comedian, you have to be a lawyer and you have to be your own agent. You know what I mean? Well, at least know the agent stuff. Okay, so you need to have both, but you need to know both of their things, because it's like, God, there's battles with everybody.
It sounds like.
And it doesn't matter. I mean, your agent can turn on you. So you're trusting your agent, and then your agent turns on you, and then you're trusting this person, and they turn on you. So that's why this book is really, it's perfect for the comedians and the comic actors, okay? Because you can see the scenarios, the things that they have to go through. However, you can take that also and put it into other people's lives, into their professional work modes, partnerships they're forming, families, in business, all these things. You really have to cross your, T's and dot your I's. And you can't take anything for granted.
You sure do. You sure do.
And your book points it all out. So how did you come up with these cases? Like, how did you know which ones to pick? Or these were just like the top and the...
Right. Well, first of all, the book is based on a blog, and the blog had been going on for over 10 years by the time I decided to write the book. So the book contains maybe 20% at most of the cases in the blog, cases covered on the blog. So, I mean, it was, it's sort of like an art or maybe a science to know what to pick from the blog, because if you have so many options and then you have to choose a certain number for a book, I mean, the book cannot go on indefinitely. The book has to have some limits. So you have to pick and choose. Now, what I picked and chose depended on the subjects I was covering. And I decided to pick maybe 4 or 5, that I figured were most representative of the issue being demonstrated. So so that was how I decided to just do it. Well, obviously, it's never a perfect science, I mean, sometimes you figure, well, maybe I should have put something, that kind of thing. But ultimately, you get it done.
You did not have to say that it wasn't a perfect science, because what you've done is perfect.
Okay, thanks.
Honestly, and I wish I had the book in hand to show, because I have the PDF too, which is on my computer, which made me...
I have the book in hand if you...
Oh,
there you go.
Yeah, so that's what the book looks like.
When you open it and you're going through the different sections, you have a little blurb at the beginning of the chapter, which is you talking and explaining what's going to happen, and then you go into the case that represents the little blog that you just had. So I didn't know that these comedians, to talk about some of the comedians that you do have in there, and the turmoil that they had to...
Trials and tribulations
and money, So let's start with, I don't know, who do you want to start with? Do you want to what about Jay Leno?
There are 7 chapters in the book. I mean, all 7 chapters cover different comedians, so if you talk about Jay Leno, I have him covered in the section of free speech.
Yes.
If you talk about maybe people like Conan O'Brien, he got covered in the section with joke stealing, copyright infringement. Then if you talk about Howard Stern, he was covered in the section dealing with hashing out the deal. So, there are lots of 7 chapters covering different comedians depending on the subject, that we are trying to explain in very simple terms. So, Now, if you ask me about Jay Leno, I mean, there are, how many cases about Jay Leno? Maybe 2. The first one was a case about free speech, like a case where some, during the 2012 presidential election, there was this, he was making a joke about how rich the Republican candidates were. Then he got to Mitt Romney, and then he showed a photo of Mitt Romney's vacation home in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And then instead of showing the photo of Mitt Romney's home in New Hampshire, he showed the photo of a temple in India, a very sacred temple, a golden temple in Amritsar, India, very majestic. In other words, he was trying to demonstrate that Mitt Romney had that kind of money, that kind of opulence, his mansion in Hampshire. So yeah, so that kind of, he made a joke like that. And then the crowd ate it up. They laughed and, all that stuff. And then some weeks go by, and then he got sued by some Indian American guy who said, well, that LENO, that he had treated the Sikh religion with disrespect, because he was comparing a person who wasn't Sikh, Mitt Romney, who wasn't a member of the Sikh religion, Mitt Romney, that he was kind of insinuating that the Golden Temple in India, which has such, religious and spiritual significance, to the country and its people, that somehow it belonged to some guy who wasn't a Sikh practitioner, So he said that was kind of defamatory of the Sikh religion. It was an insult to the Indian people. It was even racist and everything. So he sued Jay Leno. And then the Indian government picked it up from there. They protested to the State Department that, look, this joke, went off the rails. It's gone too far. This is such an insult on an entire country, that kind of stuff. Well, the State Department aspect was sort of easy. The government basically told the Indian Foreign Ministry that, look, this is America. Under the First Amendment, Jay Leno had the right to do what he did, that by not going after Jay Leno, they were not thereby endorsing what he did, that is just American First Amendment freedoms that exist here. And then, of course, in the courtroom, it was clear that, in this country, the lawsuit wasn't going to go anywhere. I mean, people criticized the lawsuit. Somebody who showed up on the Bill O'Reilly show, he said, well, look, this lawsuit was so silly. It really shows that there are too many lawyers in this country today. But anyway, so eventually, though, the court told the gentleman that, look, you're an American citizen, you ought to know better that under the First Amendment, this is protected speech. It may be offensive, but in America, the First Amendment is the First Amendment. It protects even very offensive speech, but.
That's true, but isn't there like circumstances, places in between public forums and private forums, or public areas like the subway, things like that, where you can and you can't say things?
Oh yeah, well, that's different. Now you're talking about like when the government can regulate speech. So there is something they call a public forum, a traditional public forum.
Okay.
Let's say a public park.
Okay.
Or maybe the street corner. You could stand on the street corner and say whatever you want to say. It's a free country. You could go to a park, pick up a microphone, and you're talking to people and things like that. So that's a public forum. The government cannot prevent somebody from speaking because they don't like what the person was going to say. Maybe they cannot stop you from speaking because they think that you're going to say something that is homophobic or anti-Semitic or whatever. No. The First Amendment protects you, even though, it may be a very offensive kind of speech to some people, or maybe to everybody. Yet, the First Amendment still protects you. So as long as you're speaking in that kind of public forum, the government cannot really stop you unless they have a very compelling reason. And it's difficult for them to arrive at the standard of compelling reason to restrain that kind of speech. Now, that's the public forum. Though if you go to the subway, for instance, the subway is a limited forum. It's not the kind of public forum that a public park is. So the government can limit the kind of speech that they want in that place. But once it says we can permit advertisements, so ads can come in, but maybe other kinds of speech can come in. But once what you have is an ad, they cannot stop the ad because they don't like the subject of the ad or the product that the ad, is publicizing. So that's the thing. So there are differences. One is a public forum, a traditional public forum. It's completely free. You can say whatever, unless there is a compelling reason to stop you. Okay, but if you have other forums like the subway system or maybe maybe even, okay, let's say a school, for instance. A school is even more limited in what you can say in a school.
Yeah.
So, or let's say a prison is even more limited what you can say in a prison. So your First Amendment rights can still be curtailed depending on the forum. But the place where you have the most expression, the most ability to be a First Amendment advocate or whatever, is like a traditional public forum. You can stand on the street corner and say whatever you want to say. You can attack the war in Gaza or Ukraine or Vietnam, whatever. Or you can, so you can do that on a street corner or in a park, something like that. Those are traditional public forums. So the extent to which the government can curtail your speech depends on the forum where the speech is being rendered. So from traditional public forum to more limited forums, and then to even more limited forums. But if it's a private space, let's say somebody's home, or maybe a private institution, well, you don't have that kind of right, because the First Amendment, what it does is to restrain the government, not individuals. If you're a private individual, you can prohibit people from saying some things, in your space, your home. But so the government, is prohibited from curtailing speech in public forums, maybe traditional public forum, and then to a lesser extent, a more limited public forum like the subways, and then even more limited public forums, let's say a prison or a school, so the more the venue changes, the more the government can maybe limit speech. But, again, this is the government. But when it comes to the private person, maybe, let's say you have a club, well, you can decide you're not going to have some kind of speech in your club. Nobody can stop you from doing that. So that's where that is. So the section you're talking about, yeah, I have it, in the section on free speech too. A case where, some Muslim comedian, I think that was chapter 2, some Muslim comedian, they were trying to have an event, where they were trying to talk about how Muslims were not a threat to America, that Muslims are just like other people. So these are comedians. And then they were trying to advertise the event on the MTA buses. MTA, the subways. I mean, if those who know New York, the trains.
Yep.
When you come into the trains, there are lots of ads and things. So yeah, so the MTA said, no, you can't advertise this. It's not. We don't want this kind of speech. And then the court said, well, you can't. That's discrimination against this kind of speech. Because this is a public forum, even though it's a limited forum, and you have allowed speech like ads to be rendered in that forum. As long as it's an ad, you cannot allow one kind of ad and block the other kind of ad. So the court said, well, look, the CNN was having a debate among the presidential candidates, and you allowed that ad to run in that subway. So that means now you allow ads, but we are not going to allow you to ban this particular ad because maybe you don't like that it's an ad about Muslims. So that kind of thing. So it's like, once it's a limited forum, but you allow certain kinds of ads or certain kinds of information, then you cannot discriminate against.
Right. If you're going to do it here, you have to do it here.
Exactly. So that's what that case was about, but that was a limited public forum, that the New York City and subways. You have that in chapter 2, so it kind of like tells you, you don't have to be a comedian. It's like if you're a citizen and you have you want to advertise your event. Let's say it's a comedy event, or let's say it's a musical concert or something else. So yeah, so it kind of like gives you a sense of what the law is in terms of where and when and how you can advertise.
Right. And it's fascinating because when I was going through it, in reading the book, and I had it blocked off into the different areas like that, like the free speech and the defamation of character type things. Now, I want to go into that a little bit in these defamation cases. Now, like the cases that you cited, that's one thing. Right? I can see that going back and forth too with a comedian. A comedian can, definitely. I mean, that's their shtick. That's the majority of, the comedians. I mean, I can't even imagine what Jeff Durham, would go through on a daily, but But like, what about like that in a presidential campaign? Like, what about all these campaigns and the smear ads and everything that they put out there? Now, is that, I mean, a lot of those are like blatant lies. That's when my neighbor, when I was talking about it, she's like, well, that's that puffing thing. And then you mentioned that puffing thing too. And I'm like, can you please explain how that they can get away with this stuff and yet, you know, other people are getting taken to court for saying like things like this, that they're saying slandering each other so badly?
Yeah. Now, apparently, if you're talking about politicians, for instance, a lot of times they are talking about public matters of public concern. They are public figures. Now, when you talk about First Amendment and you're talking about defamation, for instance, the First Amendment allows people to skate, you know, not be found liable for defamation if, let's say, we are dealing with public figures, or they are talking public officials, or they are talking about matters of public concern. In those situations, you are allowed to even be wrong, unless the court can find that you had actual malice. In other words, you deliberately said something that was false, deliberately. You said it knowing it was false, or you so recklessly said it knowing that there was a high probability it was going to be false. In other words, you said the thing not caring that it might be false, or not caring that it probably is false, that kind of thing. Either you did it that way.
There's a prominent figure out there now that does that kind of stuff. Not even thinking.
Yeah, but you know, they'll be protected as long as, you know, they are, let's say a politician says something about Trump or some other person, and then it happens not to be true. Well, because Trump is a public figure, or because they are talking about a matter of public concern, public interest. So the standard is higher. The standard is now what they call actual malice. It's a much higher standard, which means you have to show that the person who said what was alleged to have defamed the person did so intentionally. In other words, intentional falsehood or reckless falsehood. You were so reckless that you didn't care that this was probably not true.
Okay.
So that's one standard, what they call actual malice standard. Now, that's for public figures and public officials and public debate. If it's just a private person, let's say, yeah, your colleague Mama D, so let's say you said something about her that is not true, that defames her. In other words, by the way, defamation is like when you make a false statement of fact.
Okay.
Against somebody, a false statement of fact. I mean, a statement of fact is sort of like something that you can prove to be true or not true. If you say that it rained yesterday in Massachusetts, well, it either rained or it didn't rain. If it rained, then that's a true statement of fact. If it didn't rain, then that's a false statement of fact. So when it comes to defamation, for you to become liable, it has to be a false statement of fact that causes injury to somebody else's reputation.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah.
So that's the standard if it's private people. So if it's a private person and you say maybe like, you say something about the person, maybe that the person stole something, which happens to not be true. Well, if you say somebody stole something, that is likely to injure the person's reputation in society. Yeah. So when that's the case, then once it's false, then you become liable. But if that person, for instance, is a public figure, let's say a mayor, a governor, or maybe a celebrity, then the standard changes. It now becomes actual malice. You have to have said the thing intentionally for you to be liable. Remember, in the other case, you don't have to be intentional. Once it's false, it's false. That's, it makes you liable once it's false.
Okay.
But when it's public figure, celebrity or something like that, then it's not enough that it is false. You have to show that it was intentionally false. You understand?
I do.
So these are the differences. And I have them here in this case. And some comedians, many of them have walked away from liability, because of this. I mean, public figure, public affairs, so, that's sort of how it goes.
The comedians now, they do make fun of the you know, the candidates and the senators and the House people and whatever's in, you know, whatever's in the news at the time, you know,
Right.
and that's what they do. That's what's current. So they're making fun, current events. All right. And then, you know, sometimes those people on the other end will try to sue them,
Right.
Mm.
you know, and it's like, it's a joke.
Yeah.
It's,
Now, I have a case like this is, I mean, I have a case about Jerry Seinfeld, for instance. So, back in, I think 2010 or so, 2007, I think it was, Jerry Seinfeld's wife was involved in a lawsuit, in a copyright infringement lawsuit. You know, she wrote a book about children's cookbooks. And then another lady sued her for plagiarism. She said Jerry Seinfeld's wife copied from her book about, you know, children's cookbook. Now, the court ended up saying, no, she didn't copy from you. The subject is too general. You know, she wrote the thing differently. You don't have a copyright about how to put things in children's food. It's just too general for you to get a copyright on it. You know, you can't copyright an idea. In other words, you can copyright the way somebody put the idea together. But you cannot copyright the idea. You cannot say, well, like say something like Merry Christmas. You cannot say that other people cannot use that expression, Merry Christmas. Because nobody can have a copyright on that kind of thing because it's so general, it's so commonplace. Anyway, James Seinfeld's wife, she won that lawsuit. The court said, yeah, she didn't plagiarize your book, you know. So now Jerry Seinfeld goes on David Letterman, and then he brings up this subject again about how some lady sued his wife. You know, he used terms like wacko, not job, you know, crazy. Talked about the woman having three names. That people with three names are like assassins. You know, he talked about Mark David Chapman, James Earl Ray, the guy who killed Martin Luther King Jr. You know, those that you know that they are sorry that she's so offended, but you know she's a wacko. So anyway, so she sues him for defamation, and then she sues David Letterman and everybody for defamation, and then the court ended up saying, well, look, you know, this guy is a comedian. People who were watching that show that night, nobody could have thought that he was actually talking about an assassin or that the person was going to assassinate, you know, that it was just a joke. And the audience understood what he was saying as a joke. That they didn't really think. So in other words, if it's just a joke, then it couldn't have damaged your reputation in society because, you know, it wouldn't be a false statement of fact. You understand? Because it's just a joke.
right.
I have a thought or a question. We have many paranormal investigators, and that they're pretty much celebrities now in their own right or whatever. And there's one investigator, and I jokingly always say whenever his name is brought up, this person, they say, well, this is a celebrity. And I always jokingly say, well, he's never been on our show, so he's not a celebrity. He's not, you know. So the name has been used. I'm not going to use the name now just because I got a lawyer on the show. I'm not going to get myself in trouble. Would that be considered like insulting or defamation? Could that person go back and say, well, she said I'm not a celebrity because yada, yada, yada. Would that be something that would be?
Well, look, that's the kind of lawsuit maybe a guy like Donald Trump might file, you know, because he files lots of lawsuits. But you know, it's not.
It wasn't Donald Trump, but okay.
Yeah, but it's not gonna wash here because you know, it's just an opinion.
Okay.
Just your opinion.
See, that is my opinion.
Yeah, he believes he's a celebrity, but you think he's not a celebrity because he's never been on your show. That's different.
Okay.
But it will be different if you claim that he had an affair with somebody. And then if it turns out that he didn't have an affair with that person, then that's a statement of fact. It would then be a false statement of fact.
Yeah.
And that is liable to injure his reputation. So yeah, that would be different.
Okay.
But if you just have an opinion, that he's not a celebrity, then that's not now.
Okay. Just making sure I'm not going to get in trouble.
Yeah, it wasn't Trump, but you did mention two things about Trump. The second one is the one I want to talk about, obviously, and he was what was it? Mayer was on the show saying that he would give $5 million to Trump.
Oh, yeah. So that's Yeah, that was something that happened 2013, 2012, 2013. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Bill Maher, he was making a joke about, obviously most people know that he and Donald Trump are not friends of one another. They hate each other. So I mean, so they are detractors of each other. Anyway, so Bill Maher goes on the Jay Leno show. I mean, that was the backdrop here was when Donald Trump was saying that Barack Obama wasn't born here in the United States. That if Obama could produce his birth certificate, that he would give him, $5 million or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, so Bill Maher goes on Jay Leno's show. Yeah, I have it here. I have it here on chapter 4, something like that. Anyway, so he goes on Jay Leno and says, well, that Donald Trump, that his hair, that because of his hair, he thinks that Donald Trump is the son of an orange orangutan and a woman, a human woman. That the color of Donald Trump's hair and the color of an orange orangutan, that they were the only two things in nature of the same color. That if Donald Trump could prove that he wasn't the son of an orange orangutan and a woman, that he would give him $5 million, to give to any charity of his choice. So I mean, people laughed and they thought it was a joke, because he and Donald Trump, they go at each other back and forth.
Yeah.
So people kind of laughed it off.
And there's the foot in the current events, like you said, and it's a joke and it's comedy and it's
right.
A little bit at the time.
But anyway, so he thought it was a joke. Now Donald Trump turns around and produces his birth certificate, saying, look, I was born in Queens. I am the son of a man and a woman, not an orange orangutan and a woman. So pay me $5 million.
Right? That would be the last person that I would ever say anything like that about, because damn straight he's going to come after you.
Yeah. But, but I mean, it was clear that he wasn't going to win that kind of suit. But because, again,
No, because you said that too. All right, because this is kind of important, because you said that Donald was going to sue him for breach of contract.
Right.
But now, then you said, all right, so that really kind of isn't a really good winnable case.
No.
And I think Trump knows that. His lawyers know that, because he's lawyered up his whole life. All right. But you said that if he had gone for a defamation, it would have been a more lengthy trial. But that's something that he could have won.
Still, he couldn't have won that because, it would have been taken as a joke. He couldn't, because for defamation, it just wasn't going to work, because you have to prove that it was a statement of fact. Well, an orange orangutan and whatever, I mean, it's just too farcical.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a statement of fact that could support a defamation claim. I mean, if he would have said that maybe Donald Trump stole money or had an affair or something, that might be different. But to say, the color of his hair and it was obviously a joke.
Yeah.
And everybody knew that Donald Trump wasn't the son of an orange orangutan and a woman. Everybody knows that Donald Trump was born by a man and a woman, a human man and a human woman, not,
But anybody else would have left. Anybody else would have shrugged it off and left.
Exactly. You see, here's the thing. Donald Trump sued him because he said it was a contract.
His name in the public.
He said it was a contract. You know how there's a contract, the kind of contract we call a unilateral contract. Unilateral contract. In other words, you can say, well, usually a contract is made between two people. You give me this and I'll give you that.
Yeah.
That's the normal kind of contract, a bilateral contract. Now, there's a kind of contract, a type that we call unilateral contract, where you can say, well, my dog is missing. If you can find my dog and return it to me, I'll give you $500. Now, that's an offer. If somebody finds the dog and brings it to you, then the person has accepted the offer by fulfilling what you asked them to do. In other words, he brought you your dog, now you owe him $500. So the contract is completed at that point because he fulfilled what you wanted him to do. So Donald Trump was saying that, well, Bill Maher made him an offer of $5 million. That now he produces his birth certificate, pay me $5 million. So that was what he tried to do, that kind of thing, the unilateral contract. But anyways,
do you think that when you're talking about Donald Trump and Bill Maher at this point, but different celebrities, and when they go after each other, like I know right now there's a thing going on with two rappers, and one is a Canadian born, and I don't know where the other one is from, and they are in their music, they're dissing the one and the other. Do you think that they're doing this as a form of publicity? It keeps them in the forefront of the public, and whether it's true, bad, or otherwise, that they're having to, Drake is the name of one of them. And
Okay.
I can't remember the other gentleman's
Okay.
name. But they're going, it's like a back and forth thing where one disses the other in one song and then the other one goes back. And it's a back and forth thing. Do you think this is something that's like case-worthy, or is this more along the lines of, hey, they're both keeping their names in the public eye and there's nothing really worth, a suit?
Yeah, I mean, look, you can always sue somebody, and this is America. There are too many lawyers here, so you can always sue somebody about anything. But
Okay.
the chances of that kind of lawsuit succeeding are pretty slim.
Mhm.
These are just folks who are singing and things, and
Mhm.
accusing each other of stuff in their songs. Kind of how they get street cred and things like that.
Right.
Usually doesn't rise to the level of the kind of statements that would support a claim, maybe
Okay.
for defamation and things. It's tough. Plus, these are public figures anyway. So I mean, it's not, uh, you don't just win because you happen to have said something that wasn't true. Because they are public figures, you also have to show that the thing was so intentional, and it's a higher standard. So for those reasons, a lot of times people don't pursue those kinds of claims.
Okay.
Now, speaking of this Donald Trump thing, it's sort of like what we call strategic lawsuits, something that's beginning to happen more and more to comedians, where the people who file these lawsuits, they are not expecting to win, but they are using these lawsuits as a way to harass the comedian. I mean, it's sort of like the case with John Oliver. The guy who sued him, this guy who sued him was Robert Murray, the guy who owns the biggest coal company in this country. Now, what happened was that John Oliver was talking about the politics of the Trump administration. When Trump was saying that he was going to promote coal as a source of energy, this was in 2017. And then Oliver was trying to say, well, this is BS, it's not true. Then Oliver attacked some billionaire who was a coal industry heavyweight, that this guy was sabotaging coal industry regulations and things like that.
Okay.
That the guy was a geriatric Dr. Evil, that he was so greedy and all that stuff. And then Oliver talked about how there was an explosion at the mine in Utah, where in 2007, where about 9 people were killed. And then, there were disputes about what caused the explosion. Now, this billionaire said, no, that the explosion was caused by an earthquake. But then Oliver said, no, that there was actually a government report that suggested that the explosion happened because of sloppy mine regulations, that kind of thing, mine safety regulations and practices. Anyway, so there was that whole thing. So Oliver attacked him, made a mockery of the guy's looks and other things. Well, before the show ran, they called, before the episode ran, they called Oliver and said, well, look, if you run this episode, we are going to sue you for defamation because, this is defamatory. You can't run this. It may be a comedy show, but you can't run this. It's defamation.
Wow.
Oliver being Oliver, he refused. He ran the episode anyway. On his show, he said, well, I have been threatened with a lawsuit if I run this. Well, they can take a hike. I'm going to run this anyway. So I am running it for you. So anyway, so he ran the thing. And, they sued him anyway because, these guys, they don't bluff. These are billionaires. They have money. So
yeah, they have nothing to lose.
Yeah, exactly. So he sues him, in West Virginia, coal country, even though his company was based in Ohio. There's something they call forum shopping. You go to a forum where you get the most. Well, sort of like, where do you sue Donald Trump? Do you sue Donald Trump in Florida, where he's very popular, or do you sue him in New York, where people don't like him? So, sort of forum shopping, games lawyers play. So anyway, they sue him in West Virginia, coal country. But anyways, eventually the court said, well, no, like, this guy is a comedian. Was a joke, number one. Number two, it was an opinion. And number three, it was, like, it's a matter of public interest and stuff. So, so they dismissed the suit in West Virginia. But here's the problem. The idea wasn't to win. He knew he wasn't going to win. But the idea was to harass John Oliver. And by the time the suit was dismissed, which was very early in the process, they dismissed this suit. But by then, Oliver had paid over $200,000 in lawyers' fees and court costs and things. And then his insurance went up by like more than 300%. So that was the whole game. The same sort of thing Donald Trump did to BMI. Yeah. So, we call it a strategic lawsuit, not to win. You do it not to win, but to like
cause damage.
Push people around, not to mess with the wrong marine, as they say.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little slap on the wrist. But now, all right, I want to go back to like Trump. Trump making fun of people too. Now he makes fun of people all the time. But what about his big attack? Was it Rosie O'Donnell that he was always going after? Did she try to sue him, or should she have tried to sue him for what he was saying?
No, she can't sue him. That's a joke. She can't sue him. That's his opinion. Again, it's sort of like what Mama D said about she not believing that somebody was a celebrity. It's an opinion,
Okay.
So he might say he didn't think Rosie O'Donnell was good looking or whatever. That's just an opinion. It's not like a statement of fact. You can't sue for defamation with things like that. That's number one. Number two, if you were to start suing for defamation, then you'd have to prove that again, Rosie O'Donnell and Donald Trump, both of them are public figures anyway. So, the standard is higher with that kind of suit. So, so it's not, you see, in America, because of the First Amendment, it kind of limits how much you can sue anybody, really, especially public figures. Or let's say a private person who injects themselves, into the public eye, then, it becomes different. Like kind of one case I have here where Drew McHale, the comedian, who had a show on the network. So he attacked the Reynoldses, some dwarfs, a dwarf couple from New Jersey, talking about how, because they gave an interview to the Associated Press, talking about how they wanted to have perfect babies, even though they were dwarfs. But they said they had the right to have perfect babies and all that, kind of like, being powerful and everything. So so Joe McHale attacked them, called them people dwarfs who couldn't stop having babies, and, that kind of stuff. So just made them look ridiculous. Anyway, so they're suing for defamation and for infliction of emotional distress and everything, So the court told them, well, look, you guys may be private figures, but you kind of injected yourself into the public conversation by talking about designer babies and talking to the Associated Press. So you're no longer a bunch of private citizens. So this guy is a comedian operating in the public space, and he decides to talk about you as part of discussing issues of public concern, So you become a limited public figure for that purpose. So for you to win a defamation suit against him because of the First Amendment, you have to actually show, it's a higher standard. So,
Interesting.
So that's kind of like an example of where, you may be a private person, but you can make yourself into some kind of public figure by injecting yourself into the public arena, controversial subject or something, So,
yeah. So I have a shirt that I want to wear next week to my event. And I'm going to say, I'm going to let karma sort it out, because if I do it, I'm going to jail. I'm not going to get in trouble, right, for wearing that shirt to my huge event. There's going to be like 5,000 people there. Do you think that, I could get in trouble for wearing
It's a free country. It's a free country. I mean, you can say whatever you want. It's a shirt you're wearing. I mean, if like people who say F America or whatever, you can arrest somebody, or even burning the flag. You can burn the flag in this country. Nothing happens to you. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I would never do that.
I mean, if you live in New Hampshire, they say live free or die. That's the American spirit. So,
okay.
It is. Well, I'm from Massachusetts, so we were clear.
Exactly.
We were
exactly.
neighbors with New Hampshire. We love the New Hampshire people. I got some good friends still up there. You know,
Yeah, so
it's a great thing. But it's all over everything. Live free or
don't worry,
die.
you won't get in trouble. Dress the way you want to dress. It's there.
Okay. But now I got another way to another twist on these things too. Another subject that you breach in your book here, like Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen getting kicked off his show. Same thing. Roseanne Barr, she got kicked off her show.
Mm.
I mean, you would think that I don't know. Did they think they were above the, this happening to them because of their celebrity status? Like, Roseanne was way up there. Charlie's still way up there. You know what I mean? But you act a certain way, and it's gonna, they're only gonna take it for so long, no matter who you are.
Yeah, it's a Charlie Sheen. That's the Charlie Sheen case I discussed here too. The first chapter where he had this thing with CBS, 2.5 Men, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So the idea was, he was doing the show, and then he was supposed to, under his contract, the show was to run for a certain number of seasons, and then as long as he showed up and performed, you had to pay him. Now, at some point, he developed, a wild hair, and began to attack, Chuck Lorre, the show producer, and things of that nature. So, and then he did other things that they considered very
But
dangerous.
didn't he get drugs and alcohol and stuff like that?
Well, yeah, well, that's the thing. Part of that, he had the drinking problem, and so it kind of affected his performance. Sometimes they said that he would come to a taping and he will be drunk. He will hardly be able to stand. They'll be propping him up, all that. So that his performance, that he conducted himself in a manner that made him unable to fulfill his commitment under the contract and stuff. So they fired him. But he said, but look, you can't fire me because I was doing my job. You may not like the way I was doing it, but I was doing my job anyway. So, so the idea was, could you just fire him because you didn't like what he was saying, or that he came in occasionally, he was drunk and well, they were saying, well, look, so if he had all those problems, but you saw those problems and you didn't fire him right when those problems came up, you continued to let him perform. So you accepted his performance. Up until now, for some other reason, you want to get rid of him. And they were saying, no, you can't do that because as long as he continues to show up, you have to, allow him to complete his contract. Or if you don't want that, then you can pay him to leave. Because, that thing is sort of like a contract of personal service. You cannot force somebody to, for instance, you cannot force somebody to remain my nanny if I don't want the person to be my nanny anymore. Those contracts of personal service. An actor working on a show is a contract of personal service. If he or she says he doesn't want to continue, you cannot force him to continue. Or you cannot force a boss to accept you cannot force an unwilling boss to accept somebody else. So those kinds of contract, personal service, if you don't continue, then you're gonna have to pay the person to go away. So that was what happened with Charlie Sheen. So they paid him to go away.
Yeah.
The relationship between himself and them completely broke down. The court cannot tell Chuck Lorre and CBS to allow Charlie Sheen to continue to perform if they don't want him anymore.
Right.
So they said, okay, since the contract has ended this way, because since you were wrong, then you're gonna have to pay him. So I mean, they ended up saying that Charlie Sheen was right. The other people were wrong.
Okay.
So he was right, they were wrong. But since we cannot force them to accept him, then they are gonna have to pay him what he was promised. So he got all the money that he was supposed to get without doing the work.
Yep. That's what I can't stand about lawsuits sometimes. I mean, people, I swear some people just do the wrong things just for a payday. There were people, now I'm going to say this. My mom used to always say to me, I'm never going to invite this guy. There was a certain guy over to my house ever, because every time he would go to someone's house, and especially her friends, and she knows all of them, he would fall and sue them. Every time he went to the house. Just to be like, Ma, you're so cynical. He wouldn't do that. And that right now, I'm telling you, I got a list. I got a list of people I would never invite to my house for fear that they would sue me.
Wow.
You know,
That's really something.
I'm not even kidding. You know,
It's-
it's sad. It's sad that this is the society of you.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to jail. I'm just
A lot
saying,
of
Friends in high
lawsuits.
places.
if you did something
Yeah.
in my home or something, or fall down or whatever, and try to sue me. And I just know that this is the type of person that they are. So I don't trust them. I will never trust them, and I will never have them at my house. You know?
Okay.
Sharon, you know that I trust you because you've been at my house. Okay.
Besides, anybody who messes with Gina, you know I'm gonna come down across the American border and kick some booty.
That's right. You don't mess with that redhead.
I've got the patience of a goddess.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I think you know, this show is interesting because yeah, everybody knows I'm Canadian, so I don't understand a lot about the law. I'm going through a thing myself right now with courts and yada yada yada. But this is interesting to find out the reasons why you can and cannot sue people and the things what to do and what not to do. So in other words, I can continue to say this person's not a celebrity, but if he says that I'm mean and evil because I keep saying that, then I can sue his ass.
So now, since you're Canadian, so I have a case here that shows how Canada is different from America when it comes to free speech. You know, the First Amendment. A case here that case in free speech, Chapter 2. So there is a comedian here named Mike Ward,
Okay.
and you know, he attacked one time. He attacked a kid who was named Gabriel.
A singer up there.
A singer, right?
Okay.
A singer.
Yeah.
Yeah, a kid who was a singer, but the kid had a problem, some health condition they called Treacher-Collins syndrome. So he had his face was completely deformed and all. You know, he just looked weird. And then again, it was because of his condition. Anyway, so he was singing with Celine Dion. He sang for the Pope. When the Pope visited Canada, you know, people were sympathetic with him because of his condition. You know, so he was singing. He became sort of like a celebrity, you know, in the singing thing. So now, a couple years go by, he was still around. You know, he actually began to get better, began to heal. So he hadn't died. So this comedian is such an insult comic, you know, Mike Ward. So he attacked this kid. He said that he wishes the kid would die already, that this kid is so ugly, that the kid was a fraud, you know, that, he said that when the kid first started out, he thought the kid, he actually sympathized with the kid and he supported the kid like other people because he thought the kid would soon die.
Okay.
So now that the kid hasn't died, that it looks to him like this is like a con the whole time. You know, this kid was conning the con. So he wishes the kid would die already, all that stuff. So anyway, yeah. So the kid's family, they brought him up on charges before the Human Rights Commission. So the charges were like, okay, that he was cruel, that he damaged this kid's confidence, and so the Human Rights Commission, they fined him heavily for thousands of dollars for what they called damaging the confidence and dignity of this kid. That kind of stuff. And then he was so pissed off. He said, well, he tried to say, well, this was comedy, you know. He tried to make arguments about free speech, and they said, no. In this country, this offends human rights and everything. So they fined him heavily for that. Now, this guy sets up a GoFundMe page, for
illegal
other comedians to help make contributions to pay this money. And then he was saying, well, look, why to impose a fine on a comedian for making a joke, that this is such a destruction of comedy in Canada, that to do this to him is sort of like imposing a punishment on Vin Diesel for driving fast in the movie Fast and Furious, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what you do, right?
Right, exactly. That what comedians do, they make jokes that if you start to punish comedians for doing jokes, that you were destroying comedy completely, that nobody's gonna want to be a comedian. But that was Canada. Then people were asking me after I wrote the article, after I wrote the section here in the book, what if it would have happened in America? I said, well, it could never happen in America because
Yeah, it
Then it's
wouldn't have.
not to wake up the First Amendment. The government cannot punish a comedian for making an offensive joke or saying something that is just over the pale. Sort of like, remember what the joke I told you about the jail and the Indian government.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's that kind of thing. But in some countries like Canada, where they don't have the First Amendment, the government can actually punish you for making an offensive joke.
Yeah, but I think but just maybe I'm misunderstanding, but the comedian said that he wished the child would die with whatever age. Everybody to me is younger than me. That this young singer should die. Now, right now, everything that's going on the internet with bullying and whatnot, how many people are telling, Will Smith smacked Chris Rock.
We can talk about
isn't that a form of bullying, what he said about that young man? Never mind the negating the free speech, Canada and the US, but isn't that like a form of bullying? I wish the kid would die and just shut up.
Of course, it's bullying. It's punching down. It's serious bullying. It's very serious. It's offensive. It's very offensive. It's very offensive. But the thing is, the difference between a country like Canada, where they don't have the First Amendment, and a country like the United States, where we have the First Amendment, is in the United States, you can bully as much as you want. You can be offensive. You can be anti-Semitic. You can be very racist and homophobic.
Yet, in a lot of other countries, not in a lot of other
exactly. In a lot of countries, no way.
Okay.
That's why America is special when it comes to free speech, and it comes to the First Amendment.
Yeah, we're special, all right.
Y'all special, all right. Okay, I married an American, so I understand the idea of special.
If you go to England, for instance, today you cannot. If you say Scotland, a law came into effect last month where, if you say something that they could perceive as stirring up hatred against somebody because of their religion, their sexual orientation, their race, national origin, those kinds of things. Yeah, you could actually go to prison for 7 years and pay a heavy fine, in Scotland today since last month. I think J.K. Rowling got into trouble over those kinds. She told them, she made a joke about, transgender people. I mean, she's been having this campaign against transgender people. And then, so it's part of the thing that law tries to prohibit. And she says, well, yes, I'm going to make a joke about this. You can't get me. And they didn't do anything to her. So she was testing that law.
Okay.
But, that gives you a sense of the kind of situations that happen in other societies, things that could never happen here in America because of the First Amendment.
Right. And we're going to talk about this, right? Because Sharon brought this up too. Like when Will Smith smacked Chris Rock at the Oscars, to get up, and I mean that's bodily harm. That's battery, right? Is that bad? What is the difference between a battery? Yeah, assault or a battery. What is the difference between the two?
Well, that was battery, because battery is like an intentional contact against somebody's body without any legal justification. I mean, if you come out and slap somebody else, that's battery, clear, right and simple, because you've made a contact with somebody, the person of another person, without any legal justification. Now, if a police officer arrests somebody, cuff the person, take the person away, well, that is battery, except that there is legal justification there. He is doing his job as a police officer. So that lawful justification prevents it from being battery. Yeah. But if it's just two people and then one person goes up there and slaps the other person like Will Smith did to Chris Rock, of course, that's battery, and he'll be liable for that.
I couldn't even believe that when that happened. I thought it was going to go up,
I think at first everybody thought it was a joke. Because it's two comedians, Chris Rock and Will Smith, at first I think everybody thought it was a joke.
Yeah, and then he tried to make it look like a joke. And, he was smart the way he tried to make it like a joke, he was a good sport about it.
Yeah.
But it was battery. And, people were wondering then whether he could sue the Oscars and things, for letting that happen to him. But he can't, because, you have to prove that the Oscars knew that would happen and they didn't prevent that from happening.
Yeah, because
it was not foreseeable. Yeah. It was not foreseeable that kind of thing, that Will Smith would just go up there and attack somebody, who was doing something like that. No, I mean, it's sort of like one case I have here too. there's this comedian called Andy Dick,
Okay.
a comedian, in California. He's had some problems with alcohol and everything. But, so he was doing a show in Texas, and he was wearing a skirt, and then he had no underwear on, and then he was going down the hall doing it. He got really hot and heavy, so he was walking down the hall doing his show, and then somebody sitting by the side tried to ask him for an autograph. So he stops, pulls up a chair, then grabs the guy's head and shoves it into his, bare crotch.
Okay.
And then he moves on, and people were screaming and shouting. Anyway, so the gentleman turns around and sues him. He sues Andy Dick.
Wow.
He sues Andy Dick. He sues the comedy club.
That's disgusting.
I mean, he sues everybody he could find. Well, obviously, eventually, it was just Andy Dick that would be liable for Barry, because that was Barry.
Yeah. Okay.
It wasn't a joke, although he was a comedian, that was clear Barry.
Definitely not.
Could you sue the comedy club? You cannot sue the comedy club because that was unforeseeable.
Yeah.
It happened so suddenly, they couldn't have foreseen that would happen. But if Andy Dick had done that before, and they knew that he had that kind of reputation, that he does a thing like that, then the comedy club would be under an obligation to make sure to protect patrons from that kind of behavior. So if it can be foreseen ahead of time, then they come under an obligation, a duty, to make sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But if it just happens like all of a sudden, there was no time to prevent it because nobody was expecting it. Yes, so it's sort of like the Will Smith situation with Chris Rock. You couldn't sue the Academy just the same way he couldn't sue the comedy club for that kind of thing, because it was just so sudden and unexpected.
Right.
So they could have prevented that.
What if, say a comedian doing something like the Oscars, all right, and now you're in wherever they film the Oscars, whatever county that's in, all right, and you have the audience, and let's say you do this to someone, reverse it, all right, so you're the one on stage and you do something to someone in the audience. Now that person wants to sue you. Say that person is from maybe another country coming in. What would happen with something like that? Would the person on stage have to go to their country? Could they sue from a different country? Is that a possibility? I mean, how would that even pan out?
Yeah, you're talking about jurisdiction. I mean, who has jurisdiction to sue? Well, you either sue somebody where the thing happened, or where the person could be found. Let's say you want to sue a comedian who did something to you in America. Maybe you're from Australia. So yeah, so you can sue him. You can either sue him here, or you can wait till when it comes to Australia, you can sue him. Or if he goes to Canada, you can sue him in Canada. Because at that point, they have jurisdiction over him. You understand?
Yeah.
So there are ways to get jurisdiction over somebody. Either, if both of you come from the same place and the thing happened there, yeah, you can sue the person there because that court has personal jurisdiction over the person. But if the person leaves, then you start to talk about long-arm jurisdiction. Okay, so you can sue him here, but will the court be able to force him to come from Australia to attend court here? In theory, yes, but as a practical matter, it's difficult. So the best place to sue somebody is where he can be held liable. In other words, the court can make an order that they can enforce against the person. You understand?
Okay.
If you're in Texas and you're making an order against somebody living in Australia, well, you're not gonna send U.S. officers to go to Australia to enforce the order. So
Yeah, I know.
So it's a practical thing. It's a practical kind of situation. In theory, yes, you can. In theory, but as a practical matter, it's hard.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna put books up here.
Go ahead. Does extradition have anything to do with where you can, like you said, using that as an example? Gina smacked me, and because can the courts? Don't even try it, woman. Can the courts sign a subpoena or whatever you want to call it, a warrant out for my extradition from Canada to the U.S. to face charges, or is that just a criminal thing?
Say that again.
If I hit her,
Okay,
And
I go up to the States, and I'm watching a show that Gina's in, and she smacks me, and I come back, or I smack her, and I come back to Canada. Can the U.S. courts sign a warrant out for me and have Canada extradite me to the U.S. to face charges, or is that only a criminal thing, not just a civil thing?
Yeah, civil is different. Criminal
Okay.
is different. When it's criminal, you commit a crime and there's an extradition treaty between the countries, then they can apply for extradition
I'm gonna go
of you
smack
to
you.
come and face charges. I mean, sort of
Okay.
like what happened between Britain and the United States when some diplomat, the wife of a U.S. diplomat, killed somebody in Britain, and then she fled. So
Okay.
there were those issues about extradition treaties, to
Mhm.
extradite back to Britain to face charges and things like that.
Okay.
Sometimes they agree, sometimes they won't agree. I mean, it's sort of like Julian Assange. You know what's going on right now.
Hmm.
There's an extradition hearing going on in Britain about whether to consent to the U.S. request to have him extradited to the U.S.
Okay.
For violating America's national security and intelligence laws.
Mhm.
So usually you have a treaty between the countries, and you can apply within the framework of the treaty. But if it's something between, say, the US and Iran, well, they don't have an extradition treaty between those two countries. So, you'll be out of luck in a
Yeah.
situation like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nope. Not happening.
But in terms of civil, if it's civil, somebody slaps you and you want to sue her for battery, then, you begin to talk about personal jurisdiction. You can
Okay.
either sue her here, or if she lives in Canada, you can sue her in Canada.
Yeah.
Or if the thing happened here and she runs to Canada, well, you can sue here and then ask the court to exercise jurisdiction over somebody in Canada. It's more difficult, but in theory, yeah, they can do that.
Yeah. So isn't it true too? Now, like people will sue people like in a larger form, and then that doesn't work, but then they can also just open up a civil case and try to get some money out of it. Is
Yeah,
that
it can
how?
happen. It can happen. It can happen if you don't get enough.
Satisfaction.
Not that. Because there's something they call res judicata. I mean, if you sue the person once and the thing is completely litigated between you two, then you cannot start to relitigate the thing because
Okay.
they can't let lawsuits go on forever and ever. So at some point, it has to end. So if both of you are before the court and the issues are
Okay.
litigated between you two, and everybody had a full opportunity to present their case, and the judgment is reached, usually the courts say, yeah, this is it. We can't keep this thing going forever.
Okay.
All right. So now, flipping the script on everything that we've been talking about, to avoid these types of things, the contracts that we write between people, like how important is this, okay, to get, because you have to have, like, you can't trust even your agent. All right, we're going to be talking comedian wise. You can't even trust your agent because the agent wants to make money too, right? So you really, really, really need to read every bit of the fine print on every contract that you sign, because all of a sudden, they're getting all the profits and you're getting none, and you're the one doing all the work. And it's like, well, you signed the contract.
Now I'll give you two cases there. Like two examples here I have in this book with Gary Shandling, right? That's the first one I'll talk about. The Gary Shandling and Brad Gray, his agent and manager. So they have this contract about Gary Shandling's show about how he's gonna represent Gary and how money is gonna be divvied up and stuff like that. Well, so the show takes off and the show starts to do well. Money starts to roll in. Now difficulties arise. So this manager was double dipping.
Yeah.
He was collecting the fees of an agent, the fees of a manager, and then the fees of a producer, one person. And Gary said, well, you can't be collecting all this money.
Yeah.
Okay, because you can only dip in once. You're either a manager or you're an agent or you're the other person, but you cannot be all three and collecting money for all three. And at some point, they had difficulties, and Gary Shandling said that that Brad wasn't giving him access to the books of accounts, so he could figure out, the monies that were coming in and what he was entitled to get and things. So yeah, but anyway, so they ended up settling the case. But the thing is, it kind of dramatizes, demonstrates to you why you have to write everything clearly, because when the money starts to come in, even your best friend who was not doubling as your manager, they can turn around and, get greedy. Greed happens, so that's why you have to like really,
family turning on family. You have that.
Was it Britney Spears?
You have to be able to anticipate, the problems that can come in. I gave a rule of thumb here in this book about how to negotiate those contracts. Where I said, like, you can use what they call the officious bystander rule. Let's say you two were negotiating. One person says, I'll give you this money if you give me that. If you run 10 miles in 15 minutes, I'll give you, let's say, $20 million. And so what if you run just 5 miles? Or you run 10 miles, but you run 10 miles in 20 minutes instead of 15. So that kind of thing. So if you were negotiating the contract and then somebody says, no, you have said you're giving 10 million if he runs 10 miles in 15 minutes. What if he runs that same number of miles in 5 minutes? Will you still give him the same money? If you say yes and the other person says no, then you have a problem right there.
Yeah.
If both of you don't answer the same question in the same way, then there's a problem. So that's kind of like a rule of thumb. You can anticipate, what happens if those kinds of problems might arise. So, that's sort of the example I gave here with the Gary Shandling case, the rule of thumb when you negotiate contract. You can look at it like, what if somebody standing by the side tells the two of you, what if this happens? Will you still give him the same money? Is it still the same contract? If both of you say yes, of course, then that's a good contract because there is no dispute. You two understand everything the same way.
Right.
But if
Now,
would
you advise people to get a contract lawyer, or would any lawyer do?
No, you don't. Look, contract is contract. I mean, you don't have to be an expert contract lawyer. I mean, if you're a good lawyer, you can always, draw a good, because, a lot of times when these things happen, there are things that everybody knows could come up. So you have to like take care of those things. Of course, obviously, nobody can know everything ahead of time. Things that can happen in the course of, human interactions. They can always change. But there are things that are like they come up every now and then, or maybe they come up oftentimes, so often that you should be able to like pay attention to them. Yeah, pay attention to them and eliminate them. So yeah, so there are those. And then, of course, there are things that you cannot predict ahead of time. Let's say you have a contract to do something and then a tornado happens or some hurricane happens and it frustrates the contract. Those are
all natural disasters, so it can't be
natural disasters. So, but so you can also make a provision for what would happen if a natural disaster were to happen and frustrate the contract. So and then the other case I give here in the book concerns Howard Stern.
Yeah.
When he was making a contract with Sirius XM, about subscribers, he said, well, if he got a certain number of subscribers at the time his contract was up for renewal, they'll give him, so much money, a certain amount of money. Now, when he made the contract, the company there were two companies. One was Sirius, and then one was XM.
Yeah.
So he made the contract with Sirius. So before they got to renewal, Sirius had merged with XM, so it became Sirius XM.
Right.
Now XM brought some other subscribers in addition to what they had before. So when the renewal time comes up, Howard says, well, look, I have all these new subscribers. This is in renewal time. I have hit this magic number. You said that if I hit this number, you're gonna give me this kind of payment.
They're there though.
Yeah, but they said, well,
there.
What?
The number is there.
Yeah, exactly. He said the number was there. So they said, well, no. The number, it wasn't a number you produced. It was a number that came in because of the merger.
Doesn't matter.
Well, see, that's the problem. But he lost because the court said, well, no, it matters. If you want that kind of money, then you have to stipulate that no matter how the numbers come up, you are going to be entitled to the money. But if the numbers came in through something else that wasn't anything you did, then you're not entitled to the money. Yeah, you see, that's the thing. You know, you have to write the contract clearly, like,
Yeah,
you
but
know,
XM was its own thing. Probably
yeah,
didn't know about this, you know. And then when they came in and they subscribed anyway, you know what I mean? And it's like, and now he's got this bigger following, and the numbers they can
yeah, but
track
the number wasn't,
following them.
but he didn't bring the numbers. The numbers came in because of the merger.
I know, but again, you know,
But
that's
still,
the battle. It's like, well, the number's there. You said if I
Yeah,
get this
yeah,
number,
it's
the
true.
number's there.
But
There it
it's,
is.
but you see, that's the thing I was saying about.
She be my lawyer.
That's something I was talking about. Like, if you were having a contract negotiation, and
Mhm.
somebody standing by the side says, "How about this? Is this still the same thing?" In other words, if they would have told them, "What if the numbers came in because of a merger? Would it still be the same money?" You
Yeah.
understand?
I do understand it. I do understand, but I can understand why he was fighting it too.
Yeah, but look, you can fight about anything, but it doesn't mean you're gonna win. Because if that person would have said, "Well, if the numbers, if in 5 years' time the numbers increase, this magic number is hit, but not because of anything you did, but because of a merger, another company that was merging with this one brought those numbers, will you still get that same money that you were promised?" If both of you say, "Yeah, we're still giving the money," then that's fine.
Okay.
But if one person said, "No, no, no, it will be different," and Howard said, "No, no, no, it will be different," so.
Okay, but what if they preempted this? What if they knew, like if Howard knew that this merger was going to happen, okay, and then he knew that they were going to be new subscribers, obviously, because XM was huge, right? So could he go in and say, "I want to renegotiate my contract"? I mean, should he have done something like that?
He could have done something like that. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of what the court told. He could have done something like that, or you could have said, "Well, for instance, that no matter what happens to this count, no matter how we arrive at the numbers, no matter how we arrive at the numbers, whether it was because of a merger or it's because of organic growth, people I brought in, that you get the same money anyway, as long as the magic number is hit. But this time, the magic number was hit because of something that wasn't what Howard did. Howard didn't contribute to the numbers. He came in because of a merger. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Something he had nothing to do with. So, the court said, well, if you wanted the money in any event, then you should have said, yeah, that you're going to get the money in any event, no matter how the numbers come in. So.
But can you write a contract that has a thing like saying, if we do go to such and such an amount of money, that this happens, you know what I mean? So like you can have your contract for this, like when you're just opening a club or you're just becoming a comedian and you're just starting a sitcom, you're just whatever. All right, so you're writing your contract. Can there be a thing that's put in there that says, okay, if this takes off?
Yeah, look, it's a free country. You can make any contract you want as long as
you gotta agree
as long as it's not unlawful, as long as what they're contracting for is not illegal, and both of you are negotiating at arm's length.
Okay.
If it's arm's length by two people who know what they are doing, yeah, you can negotiate any number of situation you want, any number of terms you want. It's a free country. But the thing is, the whole point of contract is you to understand what you're getting into ahead of time. So when one person says they won't fulfill their end of the contract, the court can then find them liable for breach of contract. But as long as you two understand what the contract is, what the terms, what the expectations are. If you don't agree on what the expectations are, then you're gonna spend millions of dollars on lawyers and years getting in court.
I know, before you even get to court, there's so much that happens before you even get in front of the judge, and that is just money and money and money. And if you're going after someone with money, the longer that they drag it out, the better for them, because you're going to drop it because you're broke.
Yeah, it's true.
So, yeah.
How does this differ written contracts to verbal contracts?
Yeah,
if Gina and I are making a verbal contract, like she will pay me if she wins the lottery, she will give me half of her winnings because she loved me. And Bob heard this. He's our witness. So would a verbal contract stand up in court as well as a written contract if you have a witness to that specific contract issue?
A verbal contract is a contract. Yeah, it's a valid contract, but it's not as solid as a written contract.
Okay.
Because of issues of proof.
Okay.
It's much harder to prove a verbal contract. an
Yeah.
oral contract.
That's that movie that they made with Nicolas Cage was that cop, and he went into a restaurant and he liked the
gave the waitress money. Yeah.
because he said he didn't have tip money for her. He said, well, here's my ticket. If I win, I'll give you half. And then his wife, Rosie, what's her name? I know it's Rosie Perez.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
she is so perfect in her role. But she's like, you did what? You gonna what? You don't have to do nothing. You didn't sign anything. You know what I mean? And it's
Right.
so
Right.
and morally, he gave her half the money because
Yeah.
he said he would.
I mean, first of all, there are some contracts where you cannot make an oral contract. It has to be written. Like if it's a contract for the sale of land, or for something, if it's something that won't be performed within 1 year, a contract for 2 years or 3 years, then you have to have it written down. So there are contracts that you cannot make, or if you want to make a guarantee, you want to make yourself a guarantor of somebody's debt obligation. It has to be written down. So there are contracts that the law requires you to write down. If you make it oral, it's not going to happen. It's not going to work.
Right.
But other than those kinds of
and living wills and trusts.
Those kinds of things.
All those things.
But otherwise, if you make it oral, verbal, it's difficult to prove. But if you can prove it, then it's valid too.
Okay.
It will be accepted if you can prove it. But the reason why it's such a bad idea to make those kinds of oral contracts is because it's very hard to prove those things because all the other person has to do is deny, and that's it.
Yeah, true. Bob, you would stand behind me. It's her boyfriend, but I'm like, I own his legs, so we're good.
He would. He's generous to a fault. I'm the more one that's like, we gotta do what?
Mama D,
Yeah, Mama D, that's a different story. That's my Mama D. We gotta take care of her. But everybody else, I don't know. But
wait in line.
Yeah, there was something else I wanted to ask you here. There was a thing written here that I wanted to ask. Let's see, how about the divvying thing again. The Pauly Shore thing. Him and his brother, the mother owned the club, and him and his brother were, like partners, or they each had their jobs in the thing. But then Pauly wanted to do something, and he wanted to look at the books in order to do that. And his brother said no, and then got his mother to get him out of the whole company. Like, what are you hiding? Like, what? How did even, I mean, there's Pauly trying to do a good thing for the whole in general. And then all of a sudden he's ousted because the shyster brother, the mother, It's like, oh my God, this is what I mean. Family. You can't even trust family.
Yeah, it's family feud. I mean, I have it in this book in chapter 5 or so that covers, when the show ends and, like, what do you do when people like start to fight over property? When initially, things were going hunky-dory, and then later on, things kind of, the thing hits the fan, and everybody's like, trying to, take advantage of the other. So it was a book, something about the comedy store in Los Angeles, sibling rivalry, So Pauly was handling the publicity and bringing in the business and the comedy aspect, and then Peter, the brother, was handling the business, the finances and things, and then difficulties arose and disagreements, came up about, divvying up the stuff and management of the property. So so it happens. So you just have to indicate what would happen if those situations occur, because if you're not able to resolve those things yourselves, then the courts will come in and just use a sledgehammer to like decide the case.
And that's too bad, because that can break up the family for like ever.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's why it's so hard. It's so I've seen over the years, being in business myself, and and I never had a partner. I wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? I'm like, something always told me, I'll work with you on a project. I'll do this, I'll do that. Okay. But partners, no. You know, even my late husband, you know, he had his businesses, and he's like, "Why don't we just merge it all into one?" I'm like, "Nope, hell no." You get yours. You know, I've got 3. You've got 1. This is good. All right, you know, and you know, and we you know, filed separately everything. You know, and you know, he had his accounts, I had my accounts, and that's the way it was, and this way I've always been. I'm still that way. You know,
would you even say that to me?
We are partners here, you know, but we're not rolling in the dough here either.
Yes, we are.
Speaking of partnership, I have a case here about Adam Carolla and his partner.
You do, yes.
Yeah, you know, about their podcast and things, you know, so.
Ooh, please tell.
Yeah, when you know, so Adam Carolla gets fired. This was chapter 1. Adam Carolla gets fired from CBS, you know, around 2009, you know, so he was looking for something to do. So he decides to like launch a podcast. Then he has a friend of his, Donny Misrahi, join him. Now, Carolla was the star, the talent, and Misrahi, you know, was the technical guy with the capacity to, you know, technical capabilities to manage things and, you know, just make sure the trends are running, so to speak. And you know, he brought some money too and stuff. At some point, even his wife sort of like contributed to the business. Now, so years down the road, money starts to really come in, and then again, you know, naturally difficulties arose, disagreements and stuff. You know, so the question was, is this in a partnership, or is this just a money that a friend loaned to another friend? If it's a partnership, then both of them will share equally in the big profits that, you know, that we are coming in.
Right.
But if it's just a loan, Carolla said it was a loan, you know, so if it was a loan, he simply paid guy, you know, the money that was loaned to him. And that would be that.
That was put into the business, and then that's it.
Right, but if it's a partnership, then both of you are equal partners. Then Carolla cannot deny the guy access to the books that show where the profits were coming. You know, so which was what he was doing.
Yep.
So you know, was it a partnership or was it not? So how does the court decide if it was a partnership? Well, you know, they'll look into how you two were dealing with each other. If they thought you were dealing with the guy as a partner, if you were telling other people that he was a partner, and you know, if you were contributing things together, and both of you were at risk of losing your investment, you know, that kind of thing. So those were the things that courts consider in deciding whether it's a partnership. But I think eventually, though, they ended up settling the case because Carolla kind of figured he kind of knew where the wind was blowing, that, you know, the court was going to eventually decide, most likely, that it was a partnership. So, you know, they, you know, ended up settling that. But, you know, it's a problem because
if we all of a sudden became huge for, you know, God willing, okay, and we did, I would say, okay, we are partners. We would definitely, you know, reaping the benefits.
Call Carl.
However, that's after that, you know, whatever is paid out, you know, like it goes.
Right.
Pay bills first, and then the differences.
And then give you the rest. You know what I mean?
I think part of the mistake they made was, you know, they didn't. I mean, the easiest way to handle that thing is to like have a written contract, a partnership agreement. So from the get-go, you define the thing as a partnership, and you decide what each person is contributing, what, you know, the obligations are, you know, those kinds of So if they would have had that kind of agreement, then it wouldn't have been a problem. But they didn't have that kind of agreement. You know?
Yeah. So like if I spent all the money and Gina paid all the bills, then we know that she's the one who got all the money, and I was just the pretty face.
But still, the best thing is to have a written agreement, you know, because if you let the court decide, the court could like take those things into consideration. Say, well, if this person is laying out all this money, you know, and then this person is doing this other thing, so they are coordinating their activities and moving together toward making profits, running the risk of losing their investment. So
sorry. This is Gina's partner down here going, I'm not signing nothing. Yeah, but you're my witness that she's going to give me half of everything.
All right. Anyway.
But I mean, it's just, it's so,
There are so
In
many I's to
today's
dot
day
and
and
T's to
age,
cross.
yes, you have to be so damn specific. You have to be so careful. You have to, everything that you say, to whom you say it, to what group of people you say it, because some get more butt hurt than others. And, and it's just like, it's like nobody can play in the sandbox, everybody go home. Right?
Okay.
And that's
Yep.
it.
And I joke like, that we're partners and we joke around, but in all honesty, if I'm the type of person who believes the good in everybody before anything else, hey Vegas, and believes in the good before anything else. But I would definitely, if I had to make a contract, if I had to come into an agreement with somebody, I would definitely call Gina up and say, excuse me, can you write this up for me? Because she is very good at specific. I watch the stuff that she does for her events and everything, the shows that we do. She is very specific on everything. So I mean, she may not be a lawyer, but she be my lawyer.
Right.
And
Like,
she
yeah,
would bail us
That's
out.
nice. That's
Yeah,
nice.
for
No,
instance, that's not it. Wait a minute. Like when we go on ghost hunts, right? We have waivers of liability, the whole thing. You got to sign it if you want to, let us use your pictures, whatever that you
Okay.
take like that. Everything is on here, So
good. It's good. It's good. Now,
yeah, I've written all those.
we were just talking about defamation, right?
Mm-hmm.
We also talked about defamation. Then I was talking about like, because I don't want people to live with the impression that you could never find a comedian liable for defamation. Sometimes you can.
Mm-hmm.
If they cross the line, if they make a false statement of fact, like one of the cases I discussed in this book, where some comedian from Australia, Mick Malloy, he went on a show where a show called Before the Game, some kind of football type,
Okay.
show, where they make lots of jokes on the show too, like roughhousing kind of jokes and things, bro type jokes happen on the show. So anyway, so he goes on the show, and then he makes an allegation that actually he goes there and he says that some woman had an affair with a player on the football team of her husband. Her husband was a coach, and then this comedian said that this woman had an affair with a player on the husband's team.
Okay.
Now this woman is actually a politician, a very an important member of parliament in Australia, Nicole Carnes. Well, it turns out that the statement wasn't true.
Okay.
It was a false statement. But then he tried to say, okay, look, he's a comedian. The show is a humorous show. Lots of jokes are made on the show. That people would not think that he was saying something that was factual. The court said, no, this is different. This is not a joke. You made an allegation that somebody was involved in an extramarital affair. It was a false statement of fact. So you are liable, even though you're a comedian and things. So the thing is, you may be a comedian, you may be doing something humorous, but if the context in which you were saying the thing indicated that this was actually a statement of fact you were making,
Yeah.
instead of a joke, then that's it. If it's a false statement of fact, you were in trouble. So
and depending on where you are, that could be jailable, a jailable offense. Up to like
in some places, So, but like if that would have happened here, though, he might try to say whether she was a politician, a public figure, but still, it was a false statement of fact that he made intentionally. So the First Amendment, even that wouldn't protect him from that kind of talk. So yeah, so sometimes a comedian could get in trouble. I mean, it's rare, but it can happen.
Okay.
That's the point I'm making.
Yeah, but they do. I mean, you have to be smart. I mean, comedians for the most part are smart. Because they're coming up with all this material and stuff. They are keeping up with the times. You have to watch all. I'm sure they're home and they get the monitors all over the place of what's happening all the time for new material.
Mm-hmm.
But you still, there's that fine line. Like seriously, like Jeff Durham, with the little puppet there, I kill you.
Right. Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
you
Jeff
don't
Dunham.
see him, Ahmed, too much anymore. I mean, did he say, no more Ahmed? Did he get in trouble because
Right.
of the uprising in the Middle Eastern countries and things like that?
Right. Right. Ahmed, the dead terrorist.
Yeah, exactly. He's adorable. I don't care.
love
My preference is Bubba.
Yeah, Bubba. Yeah.
There you
Yeah.
go. I heard that smack around the world.
Yeah. Oh, so again, in the video that we were talking about, in your dialogue, the comedy dialogue thing, what's the blog that you write there, and you have comedians come in and panel discussions. So how does that even work? Do the stand-up comedians go there and everyone's in a panel and then they discuss it afterwards? I mean, I don't understand what's
Yeah, it's a combo. It's a combo show. It was a quarterly show. A quarterly show that we had in Manhattan. So the way it worked was this. I had a co-host who was actually a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so the way it works is this. We bring, we start out with some kind of reception, wine and cheese and everything, and then folks gather, and then after a while, then we start the show. We're comedians. We'd line up like maybe 4 comedians, and they have like 15 minutes each, to do their bit. And then after they finish, then they settle down to a panel. And then we start to discuss the issues of the day, whatever was big that week or that quarter. So that was how it worked. And it was a very popular event. Folks gathered, taking a show, and it was so hilarious.
Did
we did that every quarter.
The audience get to participate too? Did they get to ask the questions?
Oh yeah, and then after so it's moderated like by myself and the other guy, and then we get the audience to chime in with questions. Doing some Q&A kind of thing. Yeah, so yeah, it goes on for a while. Then after we do that, then there's more wine and cheese reception. And
can't be too much wine and cheese.
I know. I mean, that's part of why some people come there too, really.
Cheese.
Yeah. That is a new thing that's going to be at Penhurst this year too. We on our event that we are having a speakeasy with a beer beer gallery like thing. It's like
interesting. Wow.
So yeah, it's a whole new thing. But yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. But talk about contracts. There's a lot of them. Let me show you this. This is our lineup here. All right, so we have all kinds of stars coming in, and the people that play all the horror movies and all the.
When is this? When?
Next weekend.
Oh wow, interesting.
Yeah, so
I want the Ghost Brothers on our show just because I think they're hysterical.
I'll ask them.
So, Mama D wants to know. The crazy Canadian redhead wants to know, just for the fun. I'm not serious. They're not the ones that I don't think that are important.
Yeah. So we have Ghost Hunters, Ghost Brothers, and Kindred Spirits, and Brian Murray, Richard Stratton. They used to be on Ghost Hunters. Chris Williams used to be on Ghost Hunters. We have Patty Negri, the psychic. We have Jessica Chabot that's on Expedition X. My God, I don't forget. And all those horror actors, Ghost Brothers. There's just so many people are coming, and it's all over the place, and it's huge. And there was a lot of contracts through the years, and then there's even contracts with just the people that work. So it's a lot.
I'd be like, I'm sorry, I don't read this stuff. Gina, tell me what it's all about, and should I sign it?
It's a lot. It's a lot. And Penhurst pretty much handles all that, thank God. But it's a lot.
Cool.
It's big. It's really big. So, where are you right now?
Oh, I'm in Manhattan.
You're in Manhattan? I love Manhattan.
Yeah.
I haven't been in a while.
Yeah.
Lord.
So look. So now that
So from Manhattan, for you to get to my event next weekend, it's about 3 hours.
3 hours. Well, you let me know.
You'd be like, Gina, put tickets for you at the front door.
I can do that.
You let me know. Yeah,
Okay.
so we have I mean, I wanted to mention briefly about, since you guys are not comedians, relationship between comedians and people who are not comedians, like the last chapter I cover in the book, what I call the intersection crisis.
Yep. I love this book, by the way. Just if you don't know anything, you just go. I'm so glad I put that guy in that video, because it is like that. Like, oh, I didn't even think of that. Oh, I never thought of that. I never seen this. I never heard that. And you just don't think of it, but you really should. And that's everything. All right, so go ahead. Sorry.
So like the first one I cover, like if your husband or your boyfriend or something is a comedian, and they want to talk about your life on the show, can you stop them?
Yeah, it depends on where they want to sleep when they get home, but yeah.
Well, like the first case I had here, where some British, this one happened in Britain. A couple were going through a divorce, and then the wife wanted to make sure that the soon-to-be ex-husband never talks about their failed marriage on stage.
Yep.
So she wanted to put that in some contract, like separation agreement. The guy said, no, you can't put it in here. I mean, I have been dying for 2 years to talk about this failed marriage.
Interesting.
So she couldn't enforce that. I mean, the point is,
Yeah, that would be kind of difficult.
Yeah.
Thinking.
But the other case is where the next one I put in here was the case where the wife now was the comedian, and then the marriage broke down, and then she goes on stage and she talks about how the husband abused her during the marriage. Well, the husband turns around and sues her for defamation. This case was really a bad one, because it wasn't a joke. She made a statement of fact about how he abused her in the marriage.
That can destroy his life, especially if that's
right. So yeah, eventually that settled the case, but she was going to go down with liability with that.
Okay.
So yeah, those couple cases that went down to they got settled, but they no details were published. I was like,
yeah, sort of, yeah. I mean, I guess my point is, if you have a relationship with a comedian, or a comedian is your family member,
you're fair game.
You're fair, exactly, and you can't stop them, because comedians, they talk about their lives on stage.
Yeah.
Part of their material comes from.
And I believe people who get into relationships or connections with comedians should be prepared for it, because they've been with them through that amount of time. They've watched their stuff. So for me, that would kind of that would be understandable.
Territory.
Exactly. It's like, hello, I'm going with a comedian, and my husband would be very upset. But if I was going with a comedian and they were talking about smack about me afterwards, like, dude, I cannot, my way of looking at it, I can't control what comes out of your mouth, but I can control my reactions to it. And if I make a big stink about it, that gives them more fodder, more work, gives them more prestige in the world of comedians.
Right.
Like, I just kind of like, whatever.
Right out, I say it. I'm not good at being the butt of a joke. I don't take it well. You know what I mean?
Well, what if the comedian is your in-law, your daughter-in-law, for instance? I mean, the next case I have here, where the daughter-in-law, she was married into a Jewish family, and she goes on stage and she talks about the experience of being married into a Jewish family, and then they turn around and sue her for embarrassing the family, for defamation. And then her husband, the Jewish guy, he was a lawyer. He defended his wife against the lawsuit brought by his family against her. I mean, they won the case anyway, but
that's
So I mean, if a comedian is your family member, your spouse, your in-law, part of the comedy comes from those places, and you have to be able to take the heat. On the other case, the other case I deal with here, where a comedian was actually a lawyer.
Oh wow!
Yeah, a comedian. No, a judge. Sorry, a judge was actually a comedian who moonlights,
Yes, that's a fascinating
Interesting.
thing.
Yeah,
Oh my God. I don't agree with the outcome,
yeah.
but
So when he goes there to talk about comedy, he talks about not liking children. He talks about national origin, makes jokes about women, and all sorts of people. So then, some people they felt uncomfortable with this judge who is a comedian. So
Yeah.
they were worried that if they went to his court,
they
if they went
wouldn't
to his
know.
court, they might not get a fair hearing because of all the things he says as a comedian. So they tried to remove him from, the
From the
bench.
bench. Okay, okay.
Well, the case went all the way to the New Jersey Supreme Court.
But this is the man. I think this needs to be individualized and not compartmentalized. You know what I mean? Like he was an individual who could make that, what you call that Chinese wall. He could,
Yeah, exactly.
he could make that wall. So he changed his name. He had a different stage name from his judge. He never brought any of the court cases or any subject matter into his comedy. Why is he not allowed to do that?
Yeah, you would think they should let him do that, but then again, those who don't want him to keep doing that, they might have a point too. I mean,
think
he builds a Chinese wall. I mean, when he goes, I actually know the guy personally. So when he goes talking about comedy, you would never know he's a judge ever, because he never mentions any of that. And then the next morning, when he appears as a judge wearing his robes, you would never think that he
completely
was
different person. No, it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
There are people that can, like you said, Chinese wall, I call it sitting on the fence. Like when I talk to people, what I do is I will not tell you what to do. I'll show you both sides of the fence and you have to make the decision. This judge was able to sit on both sides of the fence, bench in this case, but he was able to keep it separate. Just because you make, I don't agree with this certain comedies. If I don't like what you have to say as a comedian, I'll negate that part of you. But it won't stop watching. Matt Rife, for example, I love this guy. I think he's adorable. But what he said about, and it was a joke, and I get it, about abused wives or battered women. I mean, I didn't agree with it, but that's part of his shtick. That's what he does. Doesn't stop me from liking him as a comedian. But people fell on that when, oh my God, he's for abuse and da da da. It was a joke. The judge, he was able to do, like you said, he didn't have his judge name on stage.
No.
So I mean, to me, it would be a completely separate entity. I don't see why
he was. I mean, I thought he should be able to keep working in both capacities, but
did he?
Well,
no.
If your readers want to know how it happened, they can read it in the book. But
yeah, you guys got to get the book.
Tell me, just whispered in my ear.
It's a lot of
stuff.
It's
okay,
a lot.
I do have the book. I'm just definitely gonna have to read it.
But I gotta read this book right? This is like the last thing on this thing. It says we often hear people today don't read as much as they used to in the past. So if you could recommend one chapter in the book to someone who for some reason can't or won't read the whole book, which
you look at me.
Which chapter would it be and why?
Okay. That's a good question. Actually, so yeah, I mean, I have 7 chapters in this book. Now, if somebody only reads just one chapter, he probably want to read the chapter where even the title of the book comes from, really, which is chapter 2 of the book, on the chapter on free speech.
Okay.
When people stop laughing and start fighting, Yep. So the chapter on free speech is important because whether you're a comedian or you're not a comedian, this chapter is so important to you because it really tells you, for instance, what the First Amendment means today in America, especially in a time of cancel culture and woke ideology.
Yeah.
In a society like America that is very litigious. So, this chapter tells you exactly what can be tolerated and what cannot be tolerated. So, in all the battles over free speech today, comedians have emerged on the front lines of this battle for the rest of us because they fly closest to the sun when it comes to free speech.
Yeah.
But they talk for a living. And when you talk for a living and you talk about subjects that people feel very uncomfortable about, maybe rape jokes or their race or their sexual orientation, those kinds of things, subjects that make people uncomfortable, and you are a comedian and you're making a joke about those things, then it's a recipe for
offending people,
Yep.
getting sued, maybe getting canceled. So the point is, comedians have become sort of like our canary in the mine. Whatever happens to them in the battle over free speech is a dry run for what will happen to the rest of us, because comedians, they have the same rights as the rest of us when it comes to free speech.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have more rights than us. They have the same amount of rights. So if they the only reason they get into trouble is because they are the ones talking.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They are
True.
the ones flying closest to the sun. And if you can protect those who fly closest to the sun, then you can protect all the rest of us when it comes to free speech in a free and democratic society.
That makes sense.
So we have a dog in this fight over free speech in the popular conversation and pop culture and the national conversation. So comedians are our dog in that fight. If they lose, we lose. So we have an investment in this fight. So whether you're a comedian or you're not a comedian, this thing concerns you. That's why chapter 2 is the most important chapter in this book. If you only read one chapter, this is the one chapter I want you to read. And this chapter contains the stories of all the big comedians: Jerry Seinfeld, Jay Leno, Jimmy Kimmel, Jim Norton,
And it's
John Oliver, Bill Maher, just anybody that you can think of, so their stories are used in this book, especially in chapter 2, to demonstrate, this subject and this controversy we face today in America at the time of cancel culture and woke ideology. So this is one chapter that if you don't read anything else, this is a chapter you want to read.
Okay, I will.
That was so eloquently said and so perfect, and I thank you for saying that. But I'm going to say, read the whole damn book, okay?
Yeah, read the
whole damn book.
And it goes by fast, because it does go by the little blur.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah. And then the cases are just, it's not like 20 pages. It's not all legal jargon and things. It's regular language. It just tells you what happened, why, and how, and whatever, and states the facts. It states the facts. And they did that, and you know what I mean? So this is an easy book to read. So read the whole damn thing.
So in other words, you're telling me I have to go retail therapy shopping, right?
Book is on Amazon very easily, so you can get it there.
And it's even in Amazon.ca. So
And can you quickly talk about the Comedy Under Attack book so that they know what that's about?
Oh yeah, so it's a book about comedy, the issues comedy faces today. I mean, especially with pressure from corporations, then some problems from joke stealing, which is an inside problem. Comedians stealing jokes from each other, which is a problem. And then, of course, cancel culture and political correctness. That's the biggest line of attack against comedy. So the book kind of tells you, the subtitle is The Golden Age and the Headwinds. The Golden Age concerns how comedy has become important today, with all the money that they can make and all the conversations they lead in the pop culture. And then, how it has become like a real profession. I mean, like, just a generation ago, if you told your parents that you were going to become a comedian, they'll probably discourage you. They'll probably tell you to get a real job. But today, comedians make money. They've come into fame. They have a lot of footprint on the popular culture, a lot of impact. So yeah, they've become like the new guys, on the block. So it has become a career, a big successful career that anybody can, if you excel at it, you can be just like any other person now. So that's the golden age. And then the headwinds. The headwinds are these problems that I mentioned, the attacks from political correctness, and then the internal problems of joke stealing in the comedy space, and then, the pressures coming from corporations, when they manipulate comedy for profit purposes. So, that's what the book is basically all about.
That's very interesting. I'd like to read that one too. I really would.
And then the headwinds. So it's sort of like a balancing of things. One positive and then the other one not so positive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's the law, right? There it is.
Yeah, that kind of makes
justice. in its finest. But, you know, a good lawyer is always a good plus too to have in your contract. But,
And,
So
but
if Gina's not going to write my contract laws, you're going to be it.
yeah, I would trust him more than me.
Carl.
Absolutely, 100%. But seriously, when you read the book, you're going to think, you know, oh yeah, I'm going to need everything. You know,
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I want advice on every single thing before you enter into anything. You
Yeah.
know, so do your research. You know, cross your
Read the
T's,
book.
dot your I's. Make sure you know exactly what you're getting into. Anybody getting into a business of any kind.
Yeah,
Right?
true.
Always, it's imperative. But thank you so much. This was really a lot of information, a
Yeah.
lot of great stories. I mean, on the behalf of the poor people that got, you know, whammied in their life. But you know, it is beneficial to us. I like how you put that. Your last statements there too. That they're a dog in the fight for us, and I really like that. You know, that's a good analogy right there. And
Thanks for having me.
And
if you
let's
have
just
anything else coming out in the future, please let us know.
We'll
Yeah.
do. We definitely do. And you do the same too.
perfect.
Oh,
Well, here's the thing: is I paid so much attention to the show. I did not have time to post your link, so I did post a few links at the end of the show. Usually, I'm able to post during the show, but I was like, "You had me. You had me. You
Yes,
caught me." It's
she's
like,
fascinated.
Well, I guess you do it the next chance you get.
I put a few in at the end of the show, and so everybody who wants to go see your website or find you on Facebook, the links are in the chat room, both on YouTube and on Facebook. So people go check them out. Check out the as I said, the Comedy Goes to Court. It's in Amazon.ca. It's in Amazon.com. Get it, read it. I'm going to.
Yep. Yep. It is really good. It's worth it. It's worth it. You'll thank me. I thank you, but you'll thank me. You guys will thank me.
Yeah, read the thing for the stories and the law. You know, the stories are great, titillating, very fascinating. You know, one comedy veteran said that stand-up comedy is the most fun you can have with your clothes on.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I have a
It's
lot of
very true.
stories in
That's
this
true.
book.
Yes.
That's true.
There are lots of stories in this book that will really blow your socks off. So I mean, it's a great read. If you want to read it for the stories, it's well worth it. You know,
It is. It is. You learn things that you just didn't know. You just didn't think about, and you will. You know, especially if you're, you know, be getting into a business or just getting into a partnership with family, anyone that you think you could trust. I mean, you can't when it comes to business. You know what I mean, or
Exactly.
anything like that.
You got to dot your I's and cross your T's because you never know what's going to happen.
I mean, you know, take it from a businesswoman. I've been in business my whole life, right? I know. I've watched the people change right in front of my eyes. You know? Like, oof, you're not the same person that walked in the door. Okay.
Exactly.
I'm still the same. So anyway, but you know, that's a lot. It's a lot of information. And yeah, so if you do come out with another book, I would definitely love to have you back on to talk about
no
it.
problem. We'll do. Thank you, guys.
Well, I thank you.
Well,
It was an amazing show, Carl. Thank you very much for being us.
A couple minutes here. I'm just going to play our exit video. Good night, everybody.
Good night, y'all.
Please share the show. You know the drill. Share the show.
Don't forget and go to the Gina's event next week.
Yeah, go to Paracon. Get Carl's books. Mama read it, and we'll see you all after Paracon. No show next week. Okay, so we'll see you in a few weeks after that. Okay,
All
so
right.
ciao for now. Buonanotte, everybody.
We thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Fox Den with Gina B and Mama D. We are here every Thursday evening from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, bringing you a variety of guests. Streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, as well as our Anchor audio venues. We hope you enjoyed our show and our guest, and we would love it if you would go to our YouTube channel, The Fox Den with Gina B and Mama D, subscribe, and definitely hit that notification button to never miss a show. We'll see you all next week, and subscribers, watch for our pop-up show.